Watching TV has changed over time. Streaming has become the new norm. That's why Golden State Media Concepts television podcast dives headfirst to the world of cord cutting. Want to be on the loop of what's hot in Netflix? Or if it's not a preference, what about original shows in Hulu? We've got you covered. Join us as we fill in the blank and talk about movies to stream and what show you should be binging. This is the Golden State Media Concepts television podcast.
Thank you for tuning in to the GSMC television podcast brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I'm your host, Leah Naomi. I have a great show in store for you today. We're going to talk about Fox's Prodigal Son, CBS's Evil, and Fox's Mr. In-Between. Be sure to stay tuned until the end because I've got a great special treat in store for you. Okay, let's jump right in. Prodigal Son is a crime drama that airs on Fox. It's in its first season, and it's pretty awesome, honestly. It has a 7.6 out of 10 rating on IMDb, 55% on Rotten Tomatoes, and 94% of Google users say that they like the show. That's a lot of people. The official show description on Fox.com says, Malcolm Bright has a gift. He knows how killers think and how their minds work. Why? Back in the 1990s, his father was one of the most notorious serial killers called the Surgeon. So it makes sense that Bright is one of the best criminal psychologists around. Murder is the family business. He will use his twisted genius to help the NYPD solve crimes and stop killers, all while dealing with a manipulative mother, annoyingly normal sister, and a homicidal father still looking to bond with his prodigal son and his own constantly evolving neuroses. Well, that certainly was a mouthful. When I started watching this show, I was immediately drawn in. I am a huge fan of psychological dramas, psychology in general, and human behavior. The writers of this show have done a fabulous job of capturing the spirit of human behavior and really what causes neuroses and what causes people to interact with each other the way that they do. I think that's my favorite part of the show. The main character, Malcolm Bright, is played by Tom Paine, who you may know from The Walking Dead. He played Jesus on that show and was absolutely fabulous there as well. As Malcolm Bright, he does a really good job of capturing both sides of his character. I think there's definitely a duality there. His character is both highly intelligent and very perceptive. He picks up on all facets of human behavior and can read a situation very deftly. However, he also has a part of him that's very socially inept. He doesn't know what to say or how to say it. He has trouble getting along with people. And he definitely has some personal demons as well, and those come out in various ways. There's some physical signs that he's struggling, and there are some times when other characters in the show confront him about some of his choices and some of his behaviors. Overall, Tom Paine has done a fabulous job of capturing all those little nuances into his performance. Another very important character on this show is the father. Martin Whitley is the character's name. He's played by Michael Sheen, who has been in a lot of other stuff. Most notably recently, he was on Good Omen, which is on Amazon Prime. The father in this show is a very important character. He is sort of the backstory that keeps everything together. In some ways, he's the over-encompassing bad guy of the show. He's sort of the menacing character. He reminds me a little bit of Hannibal Lecter. This is definitely apparent when we meet him in jail for the first time, or prison. He has his own cell. It's very large. He is tethered to the wall with a sort of belt that's gives him enough freedom to move without his cell. There's a big red line on the floor, and you cannot cross the line. And so when visitors come to see him, they stand behind the line, and often they look at the line as though it's this invisible wall between them and the surgeon. He wears a very pleasant cardigan and a smile and folds his hands neatly in front of him and absolutely believes that he's in complete control of his universe despite being in prison. He's a genius in his field, and so he still does consultations, so he's still working even though he's in prison because his contribution has been that valuable. And all of these things sort of build up to a character that definitely shows some signs of narcissism. He is the center of his own universe, but he wants his family back, and he wants to be able to engage with his son and his daughter and even his wife, I believe. Ex-wife, sorry. So when the characters, each of them, come together and face Martin, they all have this underlying fear that there's some kind of manipulation going on. To me, this really does remind me of watching Silence of the Lambs and really any Hannibal Lecter related storyline or book, because we know that the things that Hannibal Lecter is saying are leading the characters to whatever end he wants them to get to. But on Prodigal Son, we don't actually know if that's what's going on. Everybody is telling us that that's what's happening, but there's enough conflicting information that we really just don't know what the father's intentions are. And to me, that's absolutely fascinating, and it makes me want to come back for more. So now that we've talked about the two main characters in Prodigal Son, I do want to acknowledge that there are some great supporting actors in this show as well. Lou Diamond Phillips plays Gil, who is an NYPD detective who plays sort of a mentor partner role with Malcolm as they go through and work cases. I think that the best surprise character in the show is the medical examiner. I will let you discover her character and the delightful comedy relief that she brings on your own. One character, though, that I'm not sure was absolutely necessary was the mom character. She's definitely the overbearing, pretentious, self-entitled, I don't know, type of woman. She knows what she wants for her children. She knows that she has been victimized by the surgeon because he tricked her into this life. But this life has afforded her immense wealth and notoriety, and she has a strong family name, and she tries to do some good with that. She gives to charities and whatnot, but her public appearance and the appearance of her children in the community is really important to her. She's a socialite. Some of the way that she interacts with her children I find to be a little bit grating at times, and I find myself sort of waiting for those scenes to end so that we can get back to the really interesting stuff. That's just my personal opinion about it. The actress does a great job in the role, but I don't think the character is necessary. Maybe she's too much of a victim, that victim mentality. Everything happened to me. Why are you doing this to me? When really her children are just out in the world living their lives and making their choices. And there's nothing wrong with raising good humans that go out into the world and make as good a choices as they can. And actually, both of her children are very successful. Malcolm being a profiler for, at first, the FBI and now for the NYPD, and her daughter, Ainsley, is a TV journalist who is being very successful in her career as well. So I don't know where the shame and all of that comes from. So not a huge fan of that character, but it doesn't really take away from the show. The real focus of the show is getting to know the demons that are inside Malcolm and his self-struggle, and also going through and solving some pretty interesting crimes. When we're talking about those crimes, he definitely puts on a flamboyant sort of performance in the way that Detective Gorin from Law & Order CI would have done. That character was played by Vincent D'Onofrio, who also had that sort of eccentric but deep insight into human behavior, and I see a little bit of that in Malcolm's character, which I actually really enjoy, so no fault there. Okay, well, we're going to take a little break. When we come back, we're going to talk some more about Prodigal Son, and what else you can stream to fill the void in between episodes.
Want to know the latest and hottest music hitting the airwaves? Don't be left out. Listen to the Golden State Media Concepts Music Podcast. Keith keeps you on the loop with everything you need to know from pop, rock, hip-hop, and the top 40. And we'll throw in news of your favorite artists, concert and tour dates, and so much more. Listen no further, because this is the gold standard in music podcast.
Welcome back. We have been discussing Fox's Prodigal Son, starring Tom Paine. Prodigal Son is a dark, gritty, psychological drama. I highly recommend that you check your local listings for the show times, so that you can get it caught up and watch it as it comes out. Otherwise, you can stream it on Hulu. The season is building up pretty wonderfully. Something intense is definitely coming, so we don't want to miss out on that. Each week, while we do wait for that next episode to air, there is definitely some time to fill, so I don't want you to fall into the show hole. So I'm going to give you some titles that you may enjoy to help you fill the void if you want to. My first recommendation is coming from being a Tom Paine fan. If you are also a Tom Paine fan and you want to see him do more stuff, I highly recommend that you check out The Walking Dead on AMC. You can also stream it on Netflix. Of course, it's a show about the zombie apocalypse. The zombie apocalypse has come and the survivors are fighting for humanity. It's based on a comic book with the same name, and it's all around awesome. If you happen to like the father, Michael Sheen, he was in a show called Good Omen on Amazon Prime. It is available to stream as well. It is one of the best shows that I've binged in a really long time, I gotta say. It's witty and bright and sharp. The writing is amazing. The storyline is very clever and has some wonderful twists to it. It's about a chess-like game of balance between good and evil, light and dark, and how those things keep the world and humanity moving forward. So it's a lot of fun. Very funny show. Of course, the natural recommendations after talking about a show like Prodigal Son would be other great crime drama shows that are out there. The first one that comes to mind is Law & Order CI, or Criminal Intent. I looked all over for a free way to stream it, and unfortunately, I couldn't find one, but you can rent or buy the episodes on Amazon Prime. Sorry that that's not available. Hulu and Netflix, you need to get on top of that because that was one of my favorite versions of Law & Order. But since that one's not available, you can definitely bite your teeth into the totally binge-worthy show Criminal Minds, which is available on Netflix. Because Criminal Minds was so popular, they did make several spin-off shows about it. My favorite version of the show happens to be the straight up original Criminal Minds. The psychology in the show is extremely interesting and on point. Again, it has very clever, sharp writing, and I absolutely love the characters. My favorite character personally is Dr. Spencer Reed. I have had a huge crush forever. He's played by Matthew Gray Gubler. The show does a really great job of looking at what is psychologically driving criminals. I think there's some really great parallels between this show and Prodigal Son, because Prodigal Son really does take the time to break down the psychology behind the criminal acts and not just the flamboyancy of the acts themselves. True Detective is another really great show. I preferred the first season to the second one, and I still have to binge the third one, so I'm going to work on getting caught up on that for you so I can keep you updated. But True Detective is available on HBO now. And as far as show recommendations are concerned, I feel like I saved the best for last. Don't forget that you can actually stream the show You on Netflix. Season 2 of the show You comes out on December 26th. So if you haven't got caught up, you're definitely going to want to watch that. It has the same executive producer as Prodigal Son. That's Greg Berlanti. It's about a bookstore manager who gets a crush on a girl that grows into something quite eccentric. He has an internal struggle. It's a very psychologically driven show. The writing is definitely on point. It's, again, another really great meaty show that's out there right now. And can't wait for season 2. Now, apart from there being a whole lot of amazing shows, there's also some great movies available to stream that can help fill some of your time. Some of the recommendations that I have that come to mind would be Nightcrawler, starring Jake Gyllenhaal. This particular movie is available on Showtime On Demand, if you have that. It's about a man who is really wanting to move up in his station in life, and he discovers the art of filming crime scenes. And it turns into quite an adventure, definitely psychologically driven. It's a thriller. It's very interesting, very well written, very gritty, really good film. On Netflix, I happened to come across a little B-rate gem called Basement. This movie it reminds me a little bit of Split. And it's definitely got some psychology in it. It's a bit of a horror flick, but it's not too gory. And it really takes a look at what makes a criminal, and it's watching somebody go through all the stages of grief and discovery, and it's just really cool. I highly recommend that you watch it. I'm probably going to watch it again because I'm excited now that I talked about it. A couple of other really great movies that are out there that might help you get through till the next episode of Prodigal Son would be American Psycho, which is one of my all-time top 10 favorite movies. That's also available on Netflix. It's starring Christian Bale. It's about a serial killer who is a little eccentric and somehow manages to exist in the corporate world while he spirals out of control. Sticking with the serial killer theme, I would also like to recommend the movie Monster, based on a real-life serial killer, Eileen Wuornos. The movie starred Charlize Theron. She won the Best Actress Academy Award that year for being ugly in the role, is really what people say about it. That's what I think of every time I think of this movie. But really, she does such an amazing job of capturing the spirit of a woman that was horribly wronged, emotionally scarred very deeply, and lashed out at the people around her in an extremely aggressive, violent way, and became the first woman serial killer that we know of. And there's also some really great documentaries about her as well. So if you're interested in learning more about that or seeing some behind the scenes, you just pop her name into the Netflix browser, and you're going to find that because it's all available on Netflix. The last movie that comes to mind is Zodiac. It's available on Netflix. It's starring Jake Gyllenhaal, Mark Ruffalo, and Robert Downey Jr. It's about the notorious real-life serial killer, the Zodiac Killer, who was never caught. It's about an investigator and some reporters that are all obsessed with figuring out who this serial killer is. There's definitely a psychological journey as they try to get into his head and figure out what his, or her, to be fair, next move is going to be. The movie is well acted. I enjoyed it the first time I saw it. I saw it in the theaters back when it first came out. But overall, it wasn't well received by audiences. I did hear recently that, I guess there's a second coming for this movie and people have watched it again and decided that they like it. And so, it's gaining popularity once again, which is very exciting for somebody who liked it the whole time. I feel like I should also mention the documentary series Making a Murderer. It's also available on Netflix. It's very popular. I've seen several episodes. I haven't finished the series yet, but it is a very interesting investigation into what goes into making somebody a serial killer. What kinds of things are impacting people that are causing them to go that way? Well, it looks like it's time for another break. When we come back, we're going to dive into Evil, the new show on CBS. And coming up later, we're going to do a segment I like to call Set It on Reddit. So be sure to stay tuned.
Tired of searching the vast jungle of podcasts? Now listen close and hear this out. There's a podcast network that covers just about everything that you've been searching. Hey! The Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network is here. Nothing less than a podcast bliss with endless hours of podcast coverage. From news, sports, music, fashion, cooking, entertainment, fantasy, football, and so much more. So stop lurking around and go straight out to the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. Guaranteed to fill that podcast itch. Whatever it may be. Visit us at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter and download us on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Google Play.
All right, we are back. We're going to be talking about CBS's Evil. Evil is a dark thriller. It's a bit of a horror show. It's a show that you can stream on CBS All Access, or of course you can watch it on CBS when it comes out, so check your local listings. It received a rating of 7.5 out of 10 on IMDb, 89% on Rotten Tomatoes, and 92% of Google users say they like the show. That's pretty impressive to me. On CBS.com, the show's description says, Evil is a psychological mystery that examines the origins of evil, along the dividing line between science and religion. The series focuses on a skeptical female psychologist who joins a priest in training and a carpenter as they investigate the church's backlog of unexplained mysteries, including supposed miracles, demonic possessions, and hauntings. Their job is to assess if there is a logical explanation or if something truly supernatural is at work. I actually feel like that's a great description of the show. It definitely is an investigative type drama with a little bit of horror mixed in. To me, it feels like if Supernatural and X-Files were to have a baby that was raised by The Exorcist. You mix all those things together and you get the show Evil. The lead character of the show, her name is Kristen Bouchard. She's played by an actress named Katja Herbers, who you may remember from HBO's Westworld. She played Emily, a rough and tough woman. She plays a pretty strong female character in this show as well. She has a lot of balance. She's a very Scully type character, to compare it again to the X-Files. She's the skeptic. She's also very kind. She's a mother of 4 young girls who have loads and loads of energy. She somehow manages to balance going out into the world and investigating the supernatural phenomenon with also raising her children in a very balanced way. She's relatable and she's very strong-willed. There's many times when people question her morals or they question her point of view, and she always seems to take the honorable road and to choose to tell the truth. So she really keeps people on track in that way. The next important character is David Acosta. He is played by Mike Coulter, also known as Luke Cage. He's a priest in training. Basically, he's a guy who had a hard life, turned it around, made different choices, and now he does drugs so he can see God. Okay, that's a really boiled down version of him. He's actually a really strong character and one of my favorite on the show. He's a true believer. Just like Mulder's character, he's very unorthodox. He goes for what he believes in, and he questions everything. The third member of the little investigative team is Ben the Magnificent. He's played by Osif Mandvi. He is a cynic and a skeptic. He performs a lot of tech-type duties, and he's definitely a gem in the show. He provides that much-needed comic relief to balance out the really serious tones and the serious nature of the topics in the show. Together, they investigate strange occurrences for the church. Independently, they really fight their own demons. Each one of these really interesting characters has something going on that is torturing them or bothering them, whether it's their inability to see God the way they used to, or how their family is faring, or whether or not the things they're investigating are actually true. They all are struggling, and it adds an extra layer of interest to the show. So again, there's that psychological draw for me where I really care about all 3 of these characters and what they're going through. But the investigations are also really interesting. They do a really great job of really writing that line between, is this a demon? Is this a haunting? Or can you actually explain all of this information away psychologically? And they give both cases. And in some episodes, you may not really know. They leave it up to you and your own beliefs. And I love that. It really makes the show powerful. I do want to say that for me, the most notable character on the show I haven't mentioned yet. His name is Leland Townsend. He's played by Michael Emerson. Michael is a wonderful actor who's done many, many things, but Ben Linus from Lost is probably my personal favorite. Leland plays sort of a rival psychologist. His character is there really to balance out Kristen Bouchard and how good she is and how honest she is. And in some ways he undoes a lot of the hard work that she's done in her life and in her career. But as time goes on and the show progresses, we start to learn that there is something else going on there, and there's something more to that character. Overall, Michael Emerson as an actor just is so good at playing evil and playing a mistrusted character that I just love to hate him. I really do. And he was perfect casting for this particular role as Leland. Overall, when I think about this particular show, I really look forward to watching it. every week. My fiance and I have a few shows that we watch together and a few shows that we enjoy on our own time. This is one of the ones that we watch together. And I gotta tell you that every week when I see it show up in my DVR waiting for me, I definitely feel like a little kid looking at a birthday cake and all that pristine frosting, and I just want a little taste. But I have been good so far, and I haven't cheated yet. I cannot make any promises as to whether or not I'll cheat in the future, because every single episode of this show is getting better and better, and I can't wait to see where it's going to go. There are some horror elements in this show that are very tastefully done. They're not too scary. My children have enjoyed watching some parts along with me. But there's definitely some creepy moments, and they do a great job of mixing in technology along with all of the psychological thrilling stuff. They talk about nightmares. They talk about VR headsets and recordings and deep fakes. And so a lot of the topics in the show are really relevant to things that are going on around us in real life. Which I think, again, makes the show very cool. It is kind of like if X-Files wasn't about aliens, and if it happened now in today's culture, it would probably look a lot like this. I also want to mention that underneath the day-to-day episode storylines, there's a bigger picture world emerging. And so the writers they've created a world that I would love to go in myself and investigate. And there's definitely a larger picture which can lend itself to many seasons of storytelling, which is very exciting to me because I'm really enjoying what I'm getting so far. And I can tell this is probably going to be a show that I'm going to want to watch for a long time to come. But there's, this show's opening up like an onion. Every episode, there's this extra layer that we're getting to dive into, and it's absolutely delicious. So, it looks like it's about time for another break. When we come back, we're going to start talking about what kinds of shows you can use to fill the show hole in between episodes of Evil, and some other recommendations and things that I have for you. And then, of course, later we're going to talk about Mr. In-Between, and Set It on Reddit is still coming up.
Want to find out what movies to go see? Then check out the GSMC Movie Podcast. It's your ticket to the latest movies, whether it's a new blockbuster event, romantic, comedy, or action flick. This show has got it all covered. They talk some what to go see now, don't bother, what's hot on Netflix, and everything in between. That's GSMCpodcast.com/movie-podcast. When it's all about the movies, it has to be this new show. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
All right, welcome back. We have been talking about CBS's new show, Evil. It's a psychological horror show and my current favorite. As we eagerly await the next episode, we have to fill in the void, so it's time to talk about what else you can watch. For Evil, I feel like I have to start with the obvious Luke Cage. If you are keen on Mike Coulter, you definitely need to check out the superhero awesomeness while it's still on Netflix. I'm sure that you all know that Marvel was bought out by Disney, and so who knows, down the road, all the Marvel shows may end up getting switched over to Disney Plus, but for now, it's still on Netflix, so binge away. There's a few seasons on there. I am a huge fan of superhero stories of all shapes and sizes, so if you are too, or even if you're just a fan of Mike Coulter, definitely check out Luke Cage. If Katya's more your speed, then you definitely want to check out her other work. She was on HBO's Westworld. She was in season 2, but you can't watch season 2 if you don't watch season 1, so binge. Westworld is a really cool show. It's also psychological in nature, actually. It's based on a movie that came out in the 1970s that is not nearly as awesome as the show. So if you feel like you want to go down the rabbit hole of cinematic history on Westworld's story, then go ahead and check out the Westworld movie. I believe that you can rent it on Amazon Prime, but I couldn't find it to stream for free, so sorry about that. But if you want to just skip and watch the show, then that's totally cool too. The show is amazing, and it is available on HBO now. Now that we've talked about the work that the actors have done, I want to talk about X-Files. X-Files is one of my all-time favorite shows. I remember when the first episode came out, sitting with my brother, crisscross applesauce on the floor in our living room, just so excited that there was going to be a show about aliens. Of course, it turned out to be so much more than that. Scully all the way. The show Evil definitely has a lot of parallels to X-Files, with the skeptic and the believer, and just all the layers of storytelling, the interesting characters. Right now, currently, I'm a little bit more in love with Evil than X-Files, which is saying a lot. I have the action figures, not gonna lie. So, I definitely think that you should go back and watch X-Files, all of the episodes. It's available on Netflix, and X-Files is awesome. In addition to X-Files, Supernatural is a whole lot of fun as well. Watching Sam and Dean Winchester go on their adventures, hunting down spirits and facing all the supernatural things that are in the world that the rest of us are completely ignorant to. It's a magical experience. And I feel like, again, there's a lot of the parallels with Evil and Supernatural. Not so much that there's a skeptic in Supernatural, but just that most of the world goes along in their ways, not even aware of the possibility that supernatural things may be real. I think that's a really cool aspect to storytelling. And Supernatural does a good job of that. The series itself is going to be wrapping up soon. I believe there's something like 5 episodes left. So then now is a great time to binge. There's a lot of seasons to ingest. So get to work on that, so that you're ready for the big finale. Another TV series that I think parallels in some ways with Evil is the Black Mirror series, available on Netflix. The question of that show is really about technology, and just because we can, should we do these things with technology? And if we do, what's the cost as humans? Now, I say that there's some parallels because while Black Mirror isn't so much supernatural as science-based, there is a lot of those underlying themes that also show up in the show Evil, which I find really interesting. So definitely, if you like the flavor of Evil, you're probably going to enjoy Black Mirror, or vice versa. Another really popular show that I have watched through in its entirety at least 3 times since it originally aired is Haunting of Hill House. Haunting of Hill House is a horror show, but to me, it's really not about the ghosts in the house so much as it's a drama about a family that happens to live in a house that may be haunted. And I say may be haunted because the show really deals a lot with the theme of, is it real or is it in their head? And the skeptic in that show really truly believes that there's some mental illness in his family and that that's the cause of all the problems that the family has been experiencing. And he went off and he wrote some books about it. And then there's all kinds of storylines that get explored. It's a really cool, non-linear storytelling experience. And every time I watch it, I see something else hidden in the shadows. And I absolutely adore when I can watch something again and it's a new experience every time. Season 2 should be releasing next year, so now, again, is a great time to get all caught up if you haven't experienced Haunting of Hill House. I recently watched a movie on Netflix that I think is also up this alley. It was called Autopsy of Jane Doe, and it's starring Brian Cox, who played Stryker in X-Men. He was also Agamemnon in Troy, which is how I know him. I honestly had to look up what his name really is. Sorry about that, Brian Cox. But Autopsy of Jane Doe was a really cool horror flick. Very tastefully done. I was on the edge of my seat the whole time, and I could not tell if things were really happening or if it was in their head. And I feel like that's really the underlying theme with the show Evil is this real? So I definitely recommend that. I'm going to go old school here and say The Exorcist is another great one. Or The Exorcist Remastered, if that's your jam. I like the original better without the creepy contortionist coming down the stairs bit. I didn't think that was necessary for the story. Watching Reagan's head spin in circles and the pea soup vomit was enough for me. But, I mean, there is exorcism in it, in Evil. It is a religious type of show. And so, you know, I can't do this and not say that you should absolutely watch The Exorcist, the original. It is available to stream on Amazon Prime. And then there's another movie that I stumbled across recently and watched on Netflix while going down the hole of B-rate horror. This one was called Mara, and it's about a psychologist who is investigating the strange death of a client that she comes across. And as she investigates this, the story just really goes in a cool direction. It has some twists and turns. Is it real or not? The main character is a hardcore skeptic, and she's experiencing things that don't make sense. It's really neat to see a horror movie where the main character is the skeptic rather than all of the people around the main character trying to tell that person they're crazy. Well, I think that does it for my recommendations to fill the void with Evil. After this break, we are going to talk about Mr. In-Between, and then coming up really soon is the Set It on Reddit segment, so stay tuned.
Always on the go, but the day just won't be one without your Hollywood fix. Let Golden State Media Concepts Entertainment Podcast take care of that. Jordan and Keith is Entertainment Tonight meets Access Hollywood.
I'm Jordan. The guy laughing, that's Keith.
Yeah, I'm Keith.
An all-inclusive look of pop culture.
All right, here we are, ready to talk about FX's Mr. In-Between. It's a crime series with Australian flair. It was rated 8.3 out of 10 on IMDb, 95% on Rotten Tomatoes, and 97% of Google users liked it. That is huge. According to fxnetworks.com, the show is about juggling a relationship, parental responsibilities, friendships, and a sick brother while earning a living would be difficult for anyone, but it's particularly difficult when you're a criminal for hire. Ray Shoesmith takes care of people, collecting debts, relieving them of drugs and guns, and often taking care of them on a more permanent basis. Ray demands respect and does not tolerate it when someone disregards his very clear code of ethics. I'm actually going to stop reading the description there because for some reason it actually includes some spoilers. So I'm going to avoid that, and instead I'm going to tell you that I really, really adore this show. It is a 30-minute, very concise, well-written comedy, maybe, drama. I don't know what you would want to classify it as because it's not really like anything else that I've seen. It's short and sweet and cool and original. Scott Ryan plays Ray Shoesmith, who is a thug for hire. He's a really cool character. He says the truth. He has a very strict code of ethics. He is respectful and honorable. He does what he says he's going to do. As he goes through, he does do some assassinations. He does some debt collecting, but he always holds himself with dignity. And he also treats the people, even the people that he's meant to kill, he also handles them really kindly and respectfully. Unless you do something that's outside of his code of ethics. Ray is a character that if you cross a boundary and break his code, he will just leave or take revenge, but he definitely takes action. He is struggling with a relationship. He's a father. He has a brother who's ill, who he cares for. The episodes are written so well that I have laughed to tears and cried from just sadness, all in the same 30-minute episode. And to me, that is masterful writing, to be able to grab my emotions and pull me up and down and this way and that way, all within 30 minutes. It goes by in a flash, but it's perfectly timed. I think if there was more, if the episodes were longer, then the story would meander. There's no filler. There's no extra. There's no fluff. You just get the story. And I feel like that's a perfect analogy for this character because Ray's character doesn't have fluff. He doesn't have fillers. He doesn't speak when it's not necessary. But when he does speak, it matters. And it's perfection. Short, sweet perfection. When talking about a show like this, I really struggle to find anything to compare it to. And when looking at recommending how to fill the show void for this particular show, which you can stream on Hulu, the shows that come to mind are Breaking Bad, which is also available to stream on Netflix. For Breaking Bad, that show is very gritty and raw and honest. It doesn't do anything to really clean up the story. It just is what it is. And Mr. White's character is absolutely fabulous at calling him like he sees him. And I think that parallels very well with Ray's character. I think it's important to say that the actor Scott Ryan, who plays Ray, actually helped come up with this idea, and the show is filmed in Australia. So maybe a little bit of my love for this show comes from all the amazing accents. I'm sorry, but it's so cool to hear people, say the darndest things in an Australian accent. It just makes everything sound a bit cooler. Okay, back to filling the void. Sorry about my tangent. Sons of Anarchy is another show that comes to mind for a recommendation. Again, it's a very gritty, raw, real type of show. There's not a lot of fluff. Sons of Anarchy does have some filler in it overall as a series, but it is a very sharp, raw TV show about characters that are not all bad and they're not all good. They just are doing the best with the circumstances that they have. And again, I really think that's a great parallel for Ray's character. Sons of Anarchy can be streamed from Netflix as well, so binge. That series is all complete, so you, just like Breaking Bad, you can watch the whole thing. Another series that seems a little bit similar in some ways would be Dexter. So Dexter, you can also stream on Netflix. It is about a serial killer who struggles internally with the monster inside. The difference, I think, between Ray and Dexter is that I'm not sure Ray has a monster inside. I think that he just is who he is. He's very good at hiding that from his daughter, however, which is admirable. But the show Dexter really does a good job of showcasing somebody who is the epitome of an anti-hero. You know, he is a serial killer. He murders people. But we really care about that character still. And we care about him even though he's awkward and is hiding in plain sight. And I feel like I feel the same way about Ray. He is just out there living his life, but he is a murderer. And I don't care because he's a really great guy. And that's some really good writing, actually. As far as movies are concerned, the movie that comes to mind the most would have to be Reservoir Dogs. I just feel like there's something about the straightforward nature of the characters, the writing, and it really could be Quentin Tarantino's style of writing in general, because another movie that comes up for me would be Pulp Fiction. Reservoir Dogs you can stream on Starz or from Amazon Prime with the Starz add-on. Pulp Fiction, I believe, is available on Netflix. It was recently, so hopefully it's still there. But again, the writing is just very sharp, and the characters say what they're really thinking. And that is definitely Ray's character 100%. If he's thinking it, he says it. Ray's character, though, in Mr. In-Between, has a very tender side. He's a father, and his daughter matters to him so much. And you can really see that in how powerfully he shows up for her. He shares custody with his ex-wife. And so there's times when he doesn't have his daughter, and then there's times when he does. And when he does, he reads her stories at night, and he does special little things for her, and it's darling, really. And she's being raised in a way where she speaks her mind as well, in a very precious way. He also has a brother who's ill, and his brother he's very sick, and there are some times when he's stuck in some embarrassing situations, and Ray really takes the time to help build him back up without compromising his dignity in any way. And it's that not compromising that human dignity that I think is what keeps bringing me back to see what else Ray is going to do. I know that there's a season 2 that's going to be coming out as well, and I hear that in season 2, his life between his job and his family are going to collide in some way, and it's supposed to be very exciting. I am on the edge of my seat. I can't wait to continue on this journey with Mr. In-Between and see where we go from there. Well, it is almost time for my favorite segment called Set It on Reddit. I am so excited to jump into that with you, but first we have to take a little break. When we come back, we'll get right into it.
Do Do you want to be healthier, yet you just don't know what to do? All these shows telling you this and that, but nothing seems to work. Well, listen close. Golden State Media Concepts has got something great for you. The Health and Wellness Podcast dedicated to workout trends, healthy eating habits, diet, and everything about healthy living. Join us in our banters as we help you not just live life to the fullest, but live it to the healthiest.
Alright guys, welcome back. Thank you so much for sticking it out to the end. I am so excited to share with you something super fun that I love to do after watching my favorite shows. So I am a huge fan of Game of Thrones, and this tradition started several years ago when I would sit down every Sunday and watch Game of Thrones. Actually, more specifically, my favorite thing to do would be to watch the previous episode and sort of reabsorb it and then watch the new episode. After the new episode aired, I would turn off the TV, bring up my phone, and go on Reddit. The folks on Reddit are absolutely hilarious and expressive, and I always thought that it was so much fun to see what the Reddit community had to say about whatever adventure I had just experienced on Game of Thrones. So I started doing that for some of my other favorite shows as well, and I thought, how cool would it be to have a little segment called Set It on Reddit, where I go on and I share some of my favorite Reddit comments and quotes, no spoilers of course, about the shows that we talked about on today's episode. So I am going to share with you some of what they said on Reddit for Prodigal Son, Evil, and Mr. In-Between. I guess let's just jump right in. So, Set It on Reddit, Prodigal Son. Travio said, such an interesting main character. I can't tell if he's lovably crazy, a damaged soul, or a horrible serial killer in the making. And Cheesy Observer added, why not both? I actually think that this is right on the nose. It's pretty funny. It was actually really difficult to find clever, well-written Reddit posts that didn't have spoilers in them. So, bear with me here. TrevMac4 said, other than the mom not looking much older than Malcolm, it was a decent show. I can definitely get behind that, TrevMac4. The mom basically looks the same age as Malcolm, and that is a little bit weird, but she is rich and plastic surgery is a thing, so I just sort of set that aside in my suspended disbelief. But it was noticeable. Nemo69_1999, I'm gonna keep watching just in the hope that Halston Sage, who plays Ainsley, wears a deep cleavage dress or is hunted by a killer who happens to walk in while she's in the shower. Malcolm is a step behind the killer, saves Ainsley, and there's an awkward scene where he stares at her naked. Well, Nemo691999, that's pretty messed up. They are brother and sister. Ew. But also I couldn't help but laugh because that might be where this show is going. Who knows? Alright, so, like I said, with no spoilers, that's what I've got for the Set It on Reddit for Prodigal Son. We're gonna move on and do Evil. So, for Evil, we've got JRam1980 said, it's a really good show so far. Has a couple of spooky moments. Can't wait to see where this goes. And Hey Hendrix says, are demons an STD? Okay, so that one actually really made me laugh. The show really does deal with a lot of demonic type themes, and they come up in some really interesting ways, and I can see where Hendrix got this. Very funny, very clever. Again, without spoilers, there wasn't a whole lot else that I could pull from Reddit for Evil, so I'm going to go and read my favorite from Mr. In-Between. This one was written by The Heart of a Blackbird. I couldn't wait, so I started season 1 again. I think one of my favorite things about the show and why it's so appealing to me is that Ray is such an unlikely protagonist. He's kind of an underdog, really. And yet, he's so good at what he does. And even though he's a killer and a badass, he's always kind of underestimated by his foes. And I think that really gives him an advantage most of the time. And the flip side, he has this unrelenting need for justice and respect, even to a fault. But he's so nonchalant that he's just a really cool character. Love it. And then Veruca Salty 1 said he's also strangely hot. I can't say that I disagree. Now, like I said, while reading some of the Reddit posts is one of my favorite things to do, I promise no spoilers this time around. So I'm going to wrap up, set it on Reddit right there for now. Next time, I want to take a look at V-Wars on Netflix, Mandalorian, and talk about some Christmas must-watch shows and movies, because it is the season. I do want to tell you that I think that Christmas is absolutely great. It's one of my favorite holidays. Honestly, my favorite holiday is Thanksgiving because I love to eat. But Christmas is second best. I love when the Christmas music comes on the radio. I like to make my own gifts for people. At my house, we do Craftmas rather than Christmas every year, and we make things and we share, and it's really exciting. But one of the things that really makes Christmas exciting for me is all the traditions. And one of the traditions we have is to pick out our Christmas movies and shows and watch them together as a family. And every year, a few different movies sort of make their way on and off of the list. But there's a few staples that are always there. And I can't wait to share with you what our list ended up being for this year. But in order to hear it, you're going to have to come back next time. As a little teaser, just so that you can start to get into that Christmassy season mood, I'm going to say that one of the movies on the list this year is Die Hard. Now, I know that traditionally people don't think of such a hardcore action movie as being a Christmas movie, but to me, I mean, it definitely takes place at Christmas time. They're at a Christmas party. That's how they all get into the building to begin with. Die Hard, of course, is a wonderful action movie starring Bruce Willis. It has just a wonderful driving plot line, and my family loves that movie. So that's one of the movies that every year around Christmas time we will watch, but we tend to watch it a little earlier in the season so that it sort of is our warm up because we're getting into the season, but it doesn't have as many Christmas themes in it as the other movies on the list. So there you have it. A little teaser of my Christmas list. That's Die Hard. Definitely check it out. Right now you can stream it on Hulu. Well, I want to thank you very much for listening to GSMC Television Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I'd like to ask that you please remember to go on and subscribe to the show, write a nice review. That always really helps us out. Also, if you could please follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, I would be so grateful. Well, thank you, and I'll see you on the flippity flip.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Television Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network, from movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.